My best friend stood up at my birthday party and confessed she'd been sleeping with my boyfriend for 2 years in front of everyone I love. I want you to picture something for me. It's your birthday. You're surrounded by every single person you love. The fairy lights are strung up perfectly. The cake has your name on it. The music is just right. And for one small moment, one beautiful, fragile moment, you think to yourself, my life is actually really good. And then someone stands up, taps a wine glass with a fork, and destroys every single thing you thought you knew. That happened to me on my 27th birthday, in my own apartment. And the worst part? The two people who wrecked my life that night were the two people I trusted most in this entire world. This is my story, and I'm going to tell you every single detail because I've been carrying this for a long time and I think some of you need to hear it. My name is Renata, and before all of this happened, I genuinely thought I had figured life out. I'd been with my boyfriend, Marco, for almost 3 years. We met at a work conference he was presenting, I was attending, and he spilled an entire cup of coffee on my notebook during the Q&A break. He apologized for about 10 minutes straight, bought me a new notebook from the gift shop, and then asked for my number so he could make it up to me properly. I thought it was the most charming thing that had ever happened to me. Marco was tall, funny, impossibly put together. He had this confidence that didn't tip into arrogance, like he genuinely believed everything would work out, and somehow that made you believe it too. We moved in together after 1.5 years. We had a dog named Biscuit. We cooked dinner together on Sundays. We had a drawer in the kitchen specifically for takeout menus, even though we ordered everything online like normal people because Marco thought it was cozy. I loved him. Like, really genuinely, stupidly loved him. And then there was Priya. Priya had been my best friend since we were 19 years old. We met in college during the worst week of my life. My parents had just told me they were separating. I had failed my first ever college exam, and I was sitting on the floor of a bathroom stall crying when someone knocked and said, I don't know what's happening in there, but I have a granola bar, and I'm not leaving until you take it. That was Priya. She was the kind of person who remembered your coffee order, showed up at your door with soup when you were sick, remembered every single thing you had ever told her, and brought it back up at exactly the right moment. She was brilliant. She was funny. She had this laugh that made strangers smile. She was, as far as I was concerned, the person I was going to grow old with. Not romantically, but in the way that really matters. The friend who would be at every birthday, every Christmas, every terrible and wonderful milestone. She and Marco had met, obviously, very early in our relationship. They got along well. Too well, I would later realize, but at the time I thought I was lucky. My boyfriend liked my best friend. My best friend liked my boyfriend. What more could you ask for? I'll tell you what more you could ask for neither of them to be lying to your face for 2 years. Here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't show up at your door wearing a sign. It creeps in quietly, disguising itself as completely normal things. Things you explain away because you love people and you trust them, and you genuinely cannot imagine them doing something like this to you. So, let me walk you through the signs. Because looking back now, they were everywhere. About 8 months into my relationship with Marco, so roughly 16 months before my birthday party, I noticed he had started going to the gym at strange hours. Early on Saturday mornings, sometimes late at night. I asked him about it once and he said his schedule was getting busier and he had to fit workouts in where he could. Made sense. I dropped it. Around the same time, Priya started canceling plans more often. Not dramatically, not in a way that set off alarm bells. Just she was busier. She'd gotten a promotion at work. She was dating someone new, a guy named Dev who she described as fine. Honestly, just fine every time I asked about him. I remember thinking she didn't seem that excited about Dev, and I felt a little bad for him. I had no idea Dev probably didn't exist. There was one evening, I remember it clearly now, where Marco and I were at a restaurant for dinner, and he got a text that made him put his phone face down very quickly. I asked who it was, and he said just a work thing, without looking up. I remember feeling a small flicker of something, not quite suspicion, just a flicker. And then the food came, and I let it go. There were moments where Priya seemed to know things about Marco that I hadn't told her. Small things. Once she asked how his sister's job interview had gone, and I had to think for a second because I hadn't mentioned his sister was job hunting. When I pointed that out, she laughed and said Marco must have mentioned it the last time we were all together. I accepted that. Why wouldn't I? There was a weekend where Marco told me he was going to visit a college friend in another city, and Priya told me she was going to a wellness retreat upstate. They were both gone the same weekend. They both came back Sunday night. Marco seemed relaxed and happy. Priya seemed tan. I made a joke about her wellness retreat, clearly including a pool. She laughed. And that was that. I think about that weekend a lot now. I'm going to pause here for a second because I want you to understand how much thought went into this party. Because it matters for what comes later. I had been planning my 27th birthday for about 2 months. I know that sounds like a lot, but hear me out. 27 felt significant to me for reasons I can't fully explain. It was the year I was going to ask for a promotion. The year Marco and I had quietly started talking about the future in a way that felt real and close. I wanted the party to feel like a celebration of everything I'd built. I booked out my apartment, moved furniture, strung up lights, ordered a custom cake from a bakery I'd been following online for 2 years. I made a playlist that took me an entire Sunday afternoon. I handwrote the invites, actual cards sent in the mail, because I wanted it to feel special. Priya helped me plan almost all of it. She came over 2 weeks before, and we sat at my kitchen table with wine and a notebook, writing out the guest list together, figuring out the food, debating whether to do a signature cocktail. She was enthusiastic and warm and full of ideas. She told me it was going to be the best party I'd ever had. She was right, technically, just not in the way she meant. Marco told me he was going to handle the flowers himself as a surprise. He showed up the afternoon with 2 massive bouquets and spent an hour arranging them while I got ready, and I remember standing in my bedroom doorway watching him fuss over the vases and thinking, I am so lucky. 30 people came that night. My colleagues, my neighbors, my cousin from out of town, Marco's 2 best friends, and Priya, who arrived in a green dress and hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. For the first 2 hours, everything was perfect. The lights were perfect. The playlist was perfect. The signature cocktail, a rosemary lemon spritz that we'd tested 3 times, was perfect. People were laughing and dancing, and someone told me I looked beautiful, and I believed them. I should have left it there. Frozen time. Stayed an hour or 2 forever. It happened at 9:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I had just looked at my phone to check when the cake was coming out. I was standing in the kitchen talking to my colleague Dana about a project we'd been working on, half listening to the music, feeling warm and happy and slightly buzzed on rosemary lemon spritz. And then I heard it, a fork tapping against a glass. The universal signal for listen up. I assumed it was Marco. He told me earlier he wanted to say a few words, a little toast, nothing major. I smiled and turned around, ready to be embarrassed in the sweetest way possible. But it wasn't Marco holding the glass. It was Priya. She was standing in the middle of my living room in her green dress, and she had a wine glass in one hand, and she was looking directly at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. It wasn't quite guilt. It wasn't quite defiance. It was something in between, like someone standing at the edge of a high dive who is already committed to jumping and is just waiting for their body to catch up. The room went quiet. People smiled expectantly, assuming this was a sweet best friend toast. I need to say something, Priya said. And I know this isn't the right time. I know that. But I've been telling myself it's never the right time for 2 years, and I can't keep doing this. I remember the exact feeling in my chest in that moment. Not fear, not yet. Just a deep, animal sense that something was about to break. Renata, she said, I'm so sorry. I am so unbelievably sorry. Marco and we've been seeing each other for about 2 years. And I know there's no way to say that makes it okay. There isn't. I couldn't let you celebrate tonight without you knowing the truth. You deserve the truth. And the room went completely, utterly, horrifyingly silent. I don't remember the next few seconds very well. I remember Dana's hand on my arm. I remember someone sucking in a sharp breath. I remember turning to look at Marco, who was standing near the hallway with his face completely drained of color, Not shocked at what Priya was saying, I noticed. Shocked that she was saying it here.
Now.
In front of everyone. He knew it was coming. He just didn't know she was going to do it like this. Renata, Marco started.
Don't, I said.
And my voice came out so calm that it scared me. I'm not going to pretend I handled it gracefully. I didn't. I asked everyone to leave. Not rudely. I didn't scream or throw things, though part of me wanted to. I just said, very quietly, I think we need to end the night here. And people left. My cousin tried to stay. Dana tried to stay. I shook my head at both of them. Priya tried to talk to me. I held up my hand, and she stopped. Marco tried to talk to me. I looked at him for a long moment. This man I had built a life with. This man whose coffee-stained apology had started everything, and I said, I need you to take Biscuit and go to your brother's tonight. Renata, please. Marco.
Take the dog.
Go.
He went.
And then I was alone in my apartment, surrounded by fairy lights and half-empty glasses and a custom birthday cake with my name on it that no one had cut, and I sat down on my kitchen floor, and I didn't cry for a long time. I just sat there. Biscuit's water bowl was still by the back door, and I stared at it for probably 20 minutes. When the crying finally came, it came all at once. Not just for Marco, not just for Priya, but for the version of my life I'd had 2 hours ago, which had been real and warm and mine, and which I was now going to have to completely dismantle. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal this big. It's not just about the people who hurt you. It's about every memory you have to re-examine. Every weekend. Every canceled plan. Every I love you that now has a shadow behind it. You lose the present and you lose the past at the same time. I sat on that kitchen floor until 2 a.m. Over the next week, both of them tried to explain themselves. Marco came back the next morning to get some things. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where Priya and I had planned this party, and he talked for a long time. He said it had started about 2 months after we'd all gone on a group trip together. He said it was complicated. He said he had tried to end it multiple times. He said he loved me. I let him finish. And then I said, "Did you think I would never find out?" He said he didn't know. He said it was never supposed to go on this long. He said a lot of things that probably made sense to him and meant nothing to me. I gave him 2 weeks to find somewhere to live. I kept Biscuit. Priya sent me a long letter, handwritten, which under any other circumstances I would have found touching. She explained that it had started impulsively, that she had felt guilty every single day, that she had tried to end it but had feelings she couldn't control. She said she loved me and that losing my friendship was the worst consequence she could imagine. I read the letter 3 times. And then I thought about every time she had hugged me while this was happening. Every birthday before this one. Every late-night phone call where I told her my fears and my hopes, and she had listened and said all the right things. Every single time she had been my safe place while she was doing this.
I didn't write back.
Here's what I want people to understand about that letter and about Marco's speech at my kitchen table. When someone hurts you this deeply, their explanations aren't really for you. They're for themselves. They need you to understand so they can feel less like a villain. But you don't owe anyone the comfort of your forgiveness on their timeline. You don't owe anyone the labor of making sense of their choices. I had spent 2 years being deceived. I wasn't going to spend another 2 years being the person who made them feel better about it. I think this is the part people always want to know. The details. The timeline. How deep it went. Over the following weeks, through a combination of conversations I chose to have and things I simply put together on my own, I started to understand the full picture. It had started on a trip. The 3 of us, plus a handful of other friends, had rented a house for a long weekend about 2.5 years earlier. On the last night, Marco and Priya had stayed up late after everyone else went to bed. Both of them later described it as just talking that turned into something else. Which, sure. But just talking that you hide for 2 years is not an accident. It is a choice made over and over again. Every single morning you wake up and decide not to tell the truth. The dev that Priya had allegedly been dating for most of the past year was a fiction. She had invented him as cover. When I thought about her describing him as fine, honestly, just fine, the The deliberate flatness of it, calculated to make me lose interest in asking, I felt a specific, cold kind of anger. The weekend where Marco visited a college friend and Priya was at a wellness retreat, they had gone away together. I eventually confirmed this through a mutual friend who had seen them at a restaurant 2 towns over and had assumed, apparently, that I knew. This mutual friend felt terrible. I told her she had nothing to feel terrible about. There were other things. Text threads I didn't ask to see but heard about. A birthday gift Marco had given me, a necklace, engraved, that I had loved, that Priya had apparently helped him pick out. That one was a strange kind of specific hurt that I still think about sometimes. The length and the depth of it, 2 years, planned, maintained, actively concealed, was what made it impossible to minimize or explain away. This wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a sustained choice. By 2 people who looked me in the eye regularly and told me they loved me. If you've ever been through something like this, you know that the betrayal itself is only one layer. The social fallout is its own separate disaster. Some of our mutual friends had known or suspected and said nothing. A few of them reached out to apologize for that. I appreciated it, though I'll be honest, it stung. I understood their position. Telling someone their boyfriend and best friend are having an affair is not an easy thing to do. But the silence had protected 2 people who didn't deserve protection at my expense. That's hard to forget. Some friends immediately took sides, which I hadn't asked anyone to do, by the way. I didn't want an army. I just wanted my life back. But people can't help themselves, and suddenly there were group chats I was removed from, events where it was complicated, friends I'd had for years who quietly drifted toward Priya because she'd known them longer or because they felt bad for her or because conflict is uncomfortable and it's easier to drift than to choose. One of Marco's friends, a guy named Seth who I had genuinely liked, texted me to say he was sorry and that he had suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to get involved. He said Marco had confided in him about struggling with the situation for the past year. I appreciated the honesty, but I asked Seth gently, if you knew your friend was hurting someone, what exactly does not getting involved protect? He didn't have a good answer. To his credit, he didn't try to invent one. My colleague Dana was incredible throughout all of this. She showed up the morning after the party with coffee and didn't ask me a single question I didn't want to answer. She let me sit in her office and stare out the window for an entire lunch break without saying a word. She is genuinely one of the best people I know, which I probably didn't say enough before all this happened. I've thought a lot about what I would do differently. The honest answer is, probably not much, because the signs I missed weren't really signs I ignored. They were signs I couldn't see clearly because I trusted the people showing them to me. And that's not a character flaw. That's what trust is. It is, by definition, the choice to make yourself vulnerable to someone else's choices. What I've learned, and this is going to sound simple, but it took me a long time to get here, is that the people who hurt us most are rarely strangers. They are the ones we gave the most access to. And that's terrifying, but it's also clarifying because it means the solution isn't to stop trusting people. The solution is to pay attention to how people treat you when it's inconvenient for them to treat you well. Priya was wonderful to me when it cost her nothing. She was warm and funny and present, and all of those things were real. I'm not going to rewrite our entire friendship and pretend it was fake. But when it cost her something, when honesty would have been hard, when doing the right thing would have hurt her, she chose herself. Every single day, for 2 years, she chose herself. And Marco loved me, I believe that. But he loved his comfort more. He loved the version of his life where he didn't have to make a hard choice, where he could have everything and hurt nobody by just continuing to not decide. Here's what I want anyone going through something like this to hold on to. People show you what they value by what they protect. Marco protected his situation. Priya protected her access to my life. Neither of them, when it was hard, protected me. You learn a lot about people in the moments when doing right by you is inconvenient. It's been about a year since my birthday party. I have a new apartment. Smaller, but it's mine in a way the old one stopped feeling like. Biscuit has adapted remarkably well, as dogs do, by simply deciding the new couch is better for napping, which honestly I think is the correct attitude toward change. I am not in a relationship. I'm not ready for that, and I've stopped apologizing for not being ready. People keep telling me I should get back out there, which is kind advice that I am choosing to ignore for now. I am slowly rebuilding friendships, some old ones that survived, some brand new ones. Dana and I get dinner every couple of weeks. My cousin visits, more than she used to. I have a group of women from a pottery class I joined on a whim 3 months ago, who I genuinely look forward to seeing every Thursday, which I would not have predicted. I haven't spoken to Priya.
I don't plan to.
This isn't a story where we reconciled or where I found a way to forgive her in a way that let her back into my life. Maybe some people can do that. I'm not built that way, and I've made peace with that about myself. I've spoken to Marco once, briefly, to deal with a practical thing. We were polite and distant, and that's probably all we'll ever be. He's moved to another city. I genuinely, somewhat surprisingly, wish him no harm. I just wish him far away. The custom birthday cake, by the way, the one that never got cut. I ate a slice of by myself at 2 a.m. after everyone left that night, sitting on the kitchen floor. It was a brown butter vanilla with blackberry jam. It was extraordinary. Best cake I've ever had. I think about that sometimes. Even in the worst night of my life, the cake was incredible. There's something in that, I think. Something about how life keeps handing you beauty right in the middle of the wreckage, whether you're ready for it or not. I wasn't ready, but I ate the cake anyway. And honestly, that felt like a beginning. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you. I know it was a long one. These things usually are when you start pulling on the thread. If you're going through something like this right now, if you're sitting on your own kitchen floor at 2 a.m. wondering how you missed it, I want you to know something. You didn't miss it because you were naive. You missed it because you loved someone, and love is not supposed to require surveillance. The failure here was not yours. You will be okay. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not for a while. But the cake will still be good, even on the worst nights. And that's enough to hold on to for now. Drop a comment below if you've ever experienced a betrayal like this. I read everything. And if this story resonated, please share it, because sometimes people need to hear that they're not alone in this. I'll see you in the next one.